kind of cocktail. And then finally, I started to get into Tao Tantra and understanding the different cycles of the body. And yeah, I went to this women's only retreat for a month, and that was the first time that I really fully accepted myself as a woman. And from there, my whole life changed, and I started really nurturing myself on a whole different level and appreciating the messages that were coming from my cycle. I used to say that there was 1 week of the month that I actually felt normal. And so, yeah, just journeying through this idea of different cycles, the different seasons of the cycles through Chinese medicine, and starting to learn what my period and my cycle was telling me. So yeah, it's been a journey over the last kind of 5 years of doing that. And last year I read this amazing book, The Optimized Woman by Miranda Gray, which just completely changed my life again, where she really, really succinctly states the different phases of the menstrual cycle and the strengths and also the weaknesses that we have as women in each of those phases. So I've been living my life according to those phases and really tuning into my strengths as well as my weaknesses in each week now of the month. And there's not a week that I don't like anymore. Like I love myself in every week, and I love the different strengths that I have, and I love being able to really play into them and also plan my month around when I know that I'm going to be not as capable as certain areas.
Wow. Okay. I'm super excited about this. I've got loads of questions that are coming up for me already. So I'm just going to say to the women who are on the call as well, like, if you've got questions, please post them, because otherwise I'm just going to keep stealing the time and asking the questions. So make sure you get your questions in, and definitely like pop the love hearts. I've seen a few of them going across. So that just lets us know that we're like on the right path, and that we're talking about things that you're interested in, and that you can hear us. That's always one of the other pieces on these lives as well, is I just want to make sure that you can hear both of us clearly. So if at any point in time you can't hear us, please make sure you let us know. And of course, questions and hearts and all sorts of stuff. So until those questions come up, I'm just going to dive in and ask you some pieces. So just to make sure that Wi-Fi is keeping on. Oh yeah, okay. Can you still hear me? It just did like a weird thing. Okay, cool. So what I want to know is, like, I'm so connected to my womb, as you know, and I'm connected to my blood, but I'm not connected to, like, in the last year I've really started to get to know like my cycle a little more. So I do know when I'm going to bleed, and I definitely know when I ovulate. Like, I can feel when I ovulate. Which is also an interesting piece to share with the women, is that I'm just about to bleed tomorrow and Arcadia is ovulating. So this is a really beautiful experience of getting like polar opposites of where we go in our cycle. So it's just a beautiful transmission that we're able to offer. And so for me, the exciting place to learn from you is like, first of all, I guess, like, what are those different cycles? But what are the things that you've actually noticed? What are the changes that you've noticed? Like, you say that you now enjoy like every week of the cycle, but why? What's shifted? Yeah. Tell me.
Yummy. So can everyone hear me okay? I want to just make sure I'm also...
I think we can. So Zoe's just said, she said, Zapheria, you and I are always on par. So obviously she's about to bleed as well. So yes, yeah. They're hearing and commenting.
So the 4 phases, It's interesting. I first learnt about them as an aspect of the elements, the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. But Miranda Gray has a different approach, which I really enjoy, which I feel translates a bit better. So the first phase is the dynamic phase. This is after bleeding. So it's roughly days 7 to 14. Mm-hmm. The second phase is the expressive phase. So that's where I am now in ovulation, days 14 to 21. The third phase is the creative phase. So you're right at the end of that, or maybe even going into the next phase. The creative phase is basically premenstrual. Mm-hmm. And then menstruation is the reflective phase. So one thing that used to really challenge me as a person was how I could be so different in different times, and I'd like feel really great about myself and be doing all these things, and then a couple of days later I'd feel like a completely different person. And there was a lot of tension created around that because I was fighting the person that I was now, because I was thinking I should still be how I was a few days ago. So a real beauty from this work is, and something that takes a little bit of practice, is trusting where we are, like trusting each phase that we move into. And it will be different for different people when they move in, but there's like a rough guide. And the more you accept how you are in each phase, or the more I have accepted how I am in each phase, the easier the phases become. Mm. So, for example, the creative phase right before you bleed is a really important time. Like there's a lot of energy in that phase, creative energy, where it's like you really need to express yourself. And if you don't, you can get that like pent up frustration. So just creating, like I'm knitting. So I spend a lot of time knitting in the creative phase. And it's just like the process of creating regardless of the outcome. It's like a way for me to express that energy. And if I really allow myself to go into that, then the reflective phase, the menstruation, is much easier. I plan ahead. I plan my week. I give myself a week off in menstruation. And that for me starts like a couple of days before I bleed. Mm. So it's like I can really soften and surrender into the creative phase, because my body knows that the next week we've got nothing on, we've got rest, and it just flows. Mm. And then a big one for me was the transition after menstruation back into the dynamic phase. So menstruation is really surrendered, really soft, really receptive. And then it changes to the dynamic phase, which is actually the most masculine phase. And it's this phase of like new energy, the spring element. So like new energy and like getting stuff done, and really analytical thinking, problem solving, and a real vibrancy. And for me, I realized how much I fought that when that came, because I was like so surrendered and soft and bleeding, and I really enjoyed it, just like not doing anything. So when I started feeling more energy, I was like, oh no, don't go there yet, because like we've got to make sure that we're done with the soft surrendered thing. So it took me quite a few months of experiencing that for me to be able to really drop in and trust, like, okay, really, really go there, really surrender for the week. And then the next week, really go there, really go into this like dynamic, strong, want to get shit done, got lots of energy. Yeah, really go there, even though it seems so contradicting. There's so much power in really going there. Did I say that? Yeah. And then, okay, I may as well go on to the next one. So the expressive phase is a bit more receptive again. And it's a lot more like, it's like the expressive phase is the heart and the summer and the fire element. So it's when we really want to connect with people. Like I'm in my expressive phase right now, and I purposely said yes to doing this week, because I knew that I would be feeling like pretty juicy and like wanting to share myself and talk a lot, and quite compassionate as well, and like really caring about my tribe and my community. Yeah, and then moving again into the creative phase, and it shifts again, and yeah, so just getting to know the phases and not fighting them, like really going into them. And at the beginning for me, it was a little bit messy, but just doing it for a few months, noticing the changes that I was experiencing, noticing where I was fighting, like where I was resisting, and just like softening and surrendering to it even more. And now I just feel like I just get this flow that just goes on and on. Like the more I surrender into the phase before, the more I can surrender into the next phase.
Oh, this feels so powerful. So Zoe's actually just asked what was days 14 to 21. So is that the expressive? Is that right?
So
before you go into creative?
Yeah, expressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Day 1 being the day that you start bleeding.
Okay. And so then, like women who have a shorter bleed, is it just so you kind of work out then, like you still just split it, I guess, into 4? Like, for example, my cycle's really short and always has been around like 21 to 23 days. It's like super short. So then I guess for me, like I'd split the 23 days into kind of 4 and then figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like you know when you ovulate, right? Like you said, you have that experience. And I really encourage everybody to at least map your cycle in terms of when you're bleeding and getting a feeling of when you're ovulating. Like there are signs in the body, lots of signs in the body that will tell you when you're ovulating, and I think that's really valuable. And then the next level is kind of mapping your emotions and your energy levels and things like that. And there's lots of new like 13 blood moons mysteries they're starting this cycle that you can map. Is really detailed. You map the moons, your emotions, your energy, your dreams, everything. That can be a bit overwhelming, like to begin with. I just at least map your menstruation and get an idea of when you're ovulating. If you don't know, your mucus changes when you ovulate, like quite noticeably. Your vaginal mucus will change. So, and generally, like if you're tuned into your body, you'll feel maybe some ovulation pains and you get a bit more sexy feeling. Yeah, like get a bit horny or something like that. That's typical. Everybody's different. But yeah, the days don't matter so much. It's more just knowing your phase. So when you're bleeding, just noticing how you're feeling during that time. Like I said, my reflective phase actually starts maybe 1 or 2 days before I start bleeding. It's like my energy's just dropped. I don't want to do anything. And then I'll bleed a few days later. And then a few days after that, even when I'm still bleeding, I feel my dynamic phase coming on. I feel more energized. So technically I'm still bleeding, but I feel my energy shifting. So it really just the awareness of the 4 phases and just like noticing, writing it down if you can, like if you want to track it in that way, like how you're feeling, and you'll find your own cycle.
Zoe's just asking, like, so she's used different apps for mapping. She's asking, do you use an app in particular or do you just journal it?
I use Woman Log Pro, which I've used for a lot of years. And I know there are a lot of new ones now, and I've tried a couple, but haven't really found a winner. And Woman Log Pro is pretty basic. I mean, it does have all the different things you can put, moods and mucus and temperature and stuff like that. But I don't really, I've tried that and I haven't really gotten into it. But Woman Log Pro, you can put the moon phases in.
Ooh.
So that's like enough for me. Yeah. And it also keeps your records backed up on email. So like I've had different phones or whatever, but I've now got my records going back to when I was, I don't even know, like 8 years ago or something. Because it just itself. So that's also why I've stayed with that one, just because it's got my history.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that. I really feel like having that history and the ability to really look back and know what's happened in your cycle throughout the years is really, really powerful. Like this is, like I said, it's something that I've only really started doing in the last couple of years, I guess, tracking. And I've been using, like I use an app called Period Tracker and it's fine, but it's nothing special. But what I did when I very first started to track was used like a mandala that I really enjoyed, and it was being able to track like, where is the moon at, and like color in all the different colors, and what were my moods, and like I really did that to start with, to have like a real in-depth contact with it, more so than just typing something into an app, like using the colored pencils and really diving in. And I was just amazed by how powerful it is to drop into that space of knowing what's going on with your cycle at all, let alone going to the depth that you're sharing with us now as well.
So I just, this is from the book, The Optimized Woman. I just photocopied this.
Oh, cool.
This is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And the 13 Blood Moons mystery one goes really, there's lots of different tangents out of it. But the powerful thing about this is that we are not linear, right? Because we're women. We're all over the place. So this is something that Miranda Gray says, like, do it in a circle. It's like just this simple thing of, rather than trying to like track it on this calendar of straight lines, if you do it this way, you can then see like, okay, this is my one cycle. And it doesn't matter what day or like what month it is or whatever. It's just, this is me in a cycle. And so if you get a few of these next to each other, you can start to notice, on day 14, I always feel really sexy, or on day 23, I get really pissed off, stuff like that. So yeah, that's really powerful. Like this one, I've just put numbers in. I don't even remember what that one was. Oh, this was like how I was feeling about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did 3 at a time when I did this. I did how I was feeling about myself, how I was feeling about my relationship, and how I was feeling about my job. And noticing that like, oh, the way I feel about myself is actually exactly the same as how I feel about my relationship. That's an interesting correlation. Like if I'm feeling pissed off, my relationship is not going so good. So yeah, that was really powerful. And I just ranked it out of 10 because I felt like that was an easy thing to do. Yeah.
Actually, that brings me to a really good question as well. Like, I wonder with you whether you've shared that with partners in the past, of like whether they've had any idea where you're at in your cycle. Because I feel like this is also a place of beauty in a partnership, for men to start to come to a place of understanding, like, where is their partner at in her cycle, other than I'm ovulating and I'm bleeding, which are the obvious ones that either a partner is aware of anyway, or that we might share depending on where we're at in our our sexual relationship with them. So yeah, I wonder, have you shared this with partners in the past?
Yes. So I've just broken up with my boyfriend, my partner, and we were dating for over the last year, and we have a very open and honest relationship. So this was a big conversation topic for us. And yeah, I mean, it has its own challenges sharing it with a partner. It's definitely a powerful thing to do. And one thing that really felt important for me was that I've been reflecting on our relationship a lot, since we've broken up. And I really wanted him to understand this part of me. And he did struggle at times, and I did struggle to like let him know. And one thing I realized is, well, I wasn't really trying to understand that part of him. Right? Like, men have their own cycles and they're not as obvious to us, but yeah, that's a big takeaway for me, was like, in my next relationship, I will be more focused on also wanting to experience that side of my partner as well. And yeah, I think it's really important in relationships to have this conversation, because like it really changes us so much. And if our partner if we relate with our partner better in certain times, then it's just good to have an understanding when we're in a different time that it might be that we're going to relate to them differently. And that doesn't mean that the relationship is bad or that you need to break up with them. There could be things that you need to work on and that come to your attention. I mean, in a perfect world, we would live with men who accepted and enjoyed us in every phase of our cycle, and I'm really looking forward to like being in that world. And really, for me, it's like the more we do that to ourselves, the more we can just transmit that to our partner. The more we know ourselves, the more we can explain, oh, hey, I'm feeling this way because of this. Yeah. So yeah, if we understand what's going on for us, it's up to us really to communicate that to our partners so that they can understand as well.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really important part. It's interesting, actually, right before coming on this call with you, I was sitting with a very dear friend of mine here. So I'm in New Zealand at this mystery school. And so him and I went through the last mystery school together, and then we're both here for this one as well. So we've got a very deep friendship. And it was really beautiful for me. I said that I was due to bleed and I was feeling soft and whatever. And him going into asking me more about that, like how do you feel in your energy at that time, and like do you normally feel like sexually attractive at that time, like a few different questions. And I was like, whoa, this is really beautiful to be seen and for someone to ask me questions of like what's happening for me right now. And I think this is a beautiful space to share with men. And I've just noticed that Zoe's asked a question as well, and Ilsa popped in and said, hey beauties, so we both need to say hi to Ilsa. Hi Ilsa. So Zoe says, it's a big thing for men. I feel even quite conscious men in my experience struggle with this idea of there being so many ups and downs to a cycle. It's a bit overwhelming for them, has been my experience. She has in brackets. Oh, look, I totally agree with you. It's something very different for them to understand because the feminine is just quite erratic anyway, let alone the fact that then we have these wild cycles that we go on. Gosh, I mean, we're all trying to figure it out ourselves, right? That's why we're on this call, is like we want to understand it for us. Like the fact that we even need to get on live calls and chat for an hour about how to understand our own cycles and where we're feeling and where we're at within that. It's like, well, of course it's going to be a big thing for men too, who want to love us and support us, but how?
Yeah. And a big thing with that is, you know, this erraticness that you speak of. It's like I used to think that I was crazy, like that I was so erratic and that there was no rhyme or reason. And now I see that there is a pattern. Like that's the most beautiful thing about this, is that there is a pattern. It's like we think that we're so unpredictable, but actually we're incredibly predictable. We're just predictable in a way that we haven't been taught, that we're not familiar with. Yeah. So it's beautiful to like, I know I feel like I know myself now. Like I can predict, like, you know, even with this call, we organized this a week and a half ago. And I was like, okay, yep, in a week and a half, I'll be good to do that because I'll be in the expressive phase. So if it's sometime within that like couple of days or week, then yeah, I'm good. And the phases kind of overlap as well, you know, so you can kind of channel that energy like later on. If it was next week, I'd still be able to channel that energy a bit, not as strongly, but yeah. And another thing, another resource talking about partners, there's Love Your Cycle. Do you know Kerry, I think her name is?
No.
This woman who's made this program, Love Your Cycle, and she's made these really amazing free resources on the website. I've actually got some here. Anyway, they're like tips for different phases of your cycle, and there's tips for women and tips for men.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I had that up on my bedroom wall when I was living with my partner, and that was really cool for him to take an interest in. Like I just left it there and he would be able to like go and have a look. And I went through a phase where I would change, like I'd put my phase up on the wall, like whatever phase I was in as well. So like you could just see like, this is what you might be dealing with this week. But without kind of putting, you know, forcing it onto him. He could just like look at that in his own time.
That's actually really beautiful. I feel like that's like a stunning way to be able to communicate, but not in a way of like, hey, I'm going to shove this in your face and you should know this is how I'm feeling right now, but just allowing him of like, I think that's a really beautiful piece for women on this call to really feel into. And it's actually something that's really sparked in me. I'm like, oh yeah, next time. I'm also not in a relationship now, but it's like, oh, that's something that I think I would like to practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really honoring way of communicating with your partner what's happening for you.
Yeah, and it also goes into any relationships. Yeah, like I mean, I'm living with my parents at the moment, and they have now, after many years, come to see, like, you know, what my phases are, and it's actually something I don't feel really comfortable still talking to them about. Like, I'll tell them when I've got my period, and they know that means, like, okay, rest and kind of give her a space. But yeah, any relationships, I think it's such important information just as women to know. Like, it's, and I'm planning on, like, living in a world where people know this, and it is so powerful on so many levels. Like, the dynamic phase is such a powerful phase for women to be in work and in, yeah, like a real work focused one. That's really powerful. Like, if people at work can get you in the dynamic phase to do all the stuff you need to do, that's great. And then, like, expressive phase is more social, so it's more like time to connect with family and friends and stuff like that. Yeah, so to just be in your full power in all times, like, to know what your superpower is in that time, just helps your life flow, and then the people around you. And if everyone can kind of have an understanding of that, then the world would just flow in a really nice way.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a world where we could say, you know, in our workplace where we were in our cycle and that everybody else knew. And actually being here in New Zealand, part of this is like there's a community of people building here, and I'm really part of this community that's building, and we're all trying to figure out, like, where does everybody fit in this and what is everybody's roles. And one of the things that landed for me was, I think it might have been yesterday actually, was this piece of how important it is that we all understand where the women are in their cycle. Because, for example, I was in the kitchen and someone was like, oh, can you take out the rubbish? And I took out the rubbish, but I got really agitated with myself because at this time I don't want to be, that's not where I'm at. I mean, I'm in this phase of, like, I just want to be soft and cuddly, like, don't make me lift things. And realizing that was my piece. Like, I could have just turned to her and said, like, she's a beautiful womb sister as well. I could have just said, honey, I'm about to bleed and I'm feeling really just, could someone else do that job right now? And it made me think, oh my God, this needs to come into communities and spaces and be something that's more publicly known, and for the veil to be taken off. And it's like, let's share this like we would share, like, how are you today?
Yeah. Well,
I'm great,
like,
thanks. Yeah, exactly. I'm great. I'm about to bleed tomorrow. Thank you for asking. I can imagine it would just be magical. Oh, There's a few more questions here, so I just want to just check where women are at. So, so Melissa's cycle seems like it's much longer. So she's like nearly 53 at the other end of this spectrum, but wondering about whether our cycles continue. Oh no, okay, so sorry. I think like 53, she's nearly 53. I was like, 53 day cycle? So Melissa's nearly 53. Actually, I've seen Melissa's profile pic. You are a stunning woman, I must say. So yeah, I'm impressed. I want to look as amazing as you do in 10 years' time when I'm 53. So she's at the other end of the spectrum, but wondering about whether our cycles continue, that they may look different, but possibly still feel the same, i.e. ebbs and flows, mood changes, etc. To me, this is a big yes. Like, to me, this is women who stop bleeding are still totally having their cycle. I don't know about you, but my understanding is that then really flips to the moon. It's like they're cycling with the moon is what I've kind of learned to understand, is as women come into the crone and into their menopause, it's like they sync to the moon, and they absolutely still have the cycles, as my experience. I don't know if you have something to share on that as well.
Yeah, I don't have that experience yet. And that sounds beautiful, to go with the moon. And just what I'm feeling as well is, like, all of these different phases, archetypes, energies that we're drawing on, we have all of it all the time. You know, it's just different chemicals in our brain, in our body, and hormones and things like that bring out more at a certain time. So even by the time you're reaching the crone stage, I can imagine just like having full access to all of those energies and having almost more of a choice and a wisdom of really feeling into each moment by moment and day by day, and just knowing that you've like traveled through all of them and can harness them all.
Yeah, that's very much where I feel as well. It's like my teacher, my womb teacher, that's one of the things that she's diving into now, is that actually ecstatic menopause is the area that she's really focused on, which I'm just loving the fact that she's bringing in this piece of teaching women that menopause can actually be an ecstatic phase of our lives, and it's like the juicy crone, instead of, there's this archetype that's been out of like the crone then becomes, old and dried up, and it's like, no, she doesn't. She becomes really freaking juicy, and she's very powerful because, as you say, she can tap into those energies at any time that she chooses. And it's like, whoa, the power in that. like yes, please. And the more I'm learning from this teacher, the more I'm like menopause is something, and becoming a crone is something to really be excited about and to look forward to. And like that initiation of the next time of life is really powerful and exciting. So yeah, it's definitely a transmission that I want the women in this group to really grasp, is like, when we talk about wombs and when we talk about menstruation, and it doesn't matter if you don't have a physical womb, you've got an energetic womb, and it doesn't matter if you don't bleed, you still have a cycle, you can energetically bleed. Like it's
on the pill or like some contraception, like you've still got a cycle, you can still know it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a real piece of wanting women to know, like, we're all in this. This is not about just the women who have wombs and who have a specific bleed cycle. It's all of us. What did Zoe say? Oh, my parents would shit themselves if I wanted to discuss my menstruation with them. Same Zoe, but it's, yeah. I think it's beautiful to be able to. I think that's like, wow, it's stunning.
There's been no choice really. Like it's just been from the beginning. It's like impacted my life so much.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. Like my dad, he really gets it. Like I don't even know how. He just gets it. He's just like, okay, the period. Like, yeah, time. Like, do you need anything? Like we went camping recently, and he was like, he went and like closed the blinds for me and like made sure I had everything, and I'm just like, oh, Dad.
That's really beautiful and special.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I want to give your dad a hug.
Yeah.
I want to be like, oh, you're gorgeous. That's really sweet. Oh, wow. So we've got a couple other questions. So Aloni's saying, could you please shed a little light on the inner masculine during bleed time? Ooh, good question, Aloni. Okay. Oh.
The inner masculine during bleed time.
I was thinking I'm the one that's about to bleed, so it's like feeling into where is my masculine right now? Like this is, for me, the masculine feminine energies are something that I work with a lot, into the depths of like the light masculine, light feminine, dark masculine, dark feminine, how they're all relating within me at any given moment. And also on the astrology side, like that my feminine is a Leo and what that means for me in my world, and that my masculine is a Taurus and how that means they relate. So it's really something that I've spent the last few years diving into a lot. But yeah, I've not thought about it when I bleed. I feel like my masculine very much takes like a back seat for me when I bleed. Like I really do soften very much into my feminine, and there's not a lot that I want to do. Like I really would like to just curl up and be, which is very much my feminine. But then also through my own experience and my own work, I do find that my masculine is always on board to some extent. Like he will very often be holding my feminine when she's in a real state of needing to rest or needing time out, I really find that he holds her. I actually have quite a relationship where the two take each other on dates and all sorts of stuff. Like, I've got a name for my masculine. Like, it's really, Zach takes Zapheria on dates, and it's really cute because they're quite often not what I would expect. He likes to take her to the movies, and it's really cute. It's very funny. He likes to pick the movie, and they're usually like quite funny, soppy movies. And like his my light masculine is quite sensitive, yet my dark masculine is like long dready hair and tattoos and like likes to ride a motorbike and stuff. But my light masculine is really soft and gooey. So so for me, I find that yet definitely when I bleed, my masculine's not in the front. He's not in the forefront at all. He's very much in the background for me. So that's kind of my own experience. But I feel like that comes from like a lot of journeying specifically with that and those energies. So I don't know for you if that's sort of kind of an area that you've dived into. Is that a word? Dove and dived into.
I from my feeling, I agree with you. Like there's definitely the feminines in the front, but it's like the masculine would be there to like make sure that the feminine has a place to soften into. Like, it would be my masculine that would like, especially like before and after my period, especially, would be like making sure that everything's kind of planned for me to be able to just really go softly. And I think that the feminine is like, they both go into this kind of gooey soft place. Like, there's this kind of level, like going into premenstrual and menstruation, there's like this level of meditation. It's like we're really connected to our subconscious and like really like kind of just floating in between realms almost. Like we go really soft and intuitive, and so sometimes I find that like the action that I get during that time, it's like I'm not even doing it. It's like my body just kind of takes over and my body's just doing it. Like, I was thinking of what tasks I would do during my period, and like I don't do a lot. Like, I really don't. I like make some food, fill up my hot water bottle, get a cup of tea. I wash my pads. Like, I use reusable pads, and I find that to be a really beautiful thing to do. And so that's like the extent of my kind of outward energy. But even that is done so softly and just like with so much time and gentleness. So I think that it's just really soft in all ways there. And if I do, I guess like I work a retail job last year, and when I had to go to work when I was bleeding, that was like a new thing for me. And something that I realized was that, okay, well, I'm just going to be how I am. I'm just going to be soft and gentle and like really accepting that everyone else had to accept me the way that I was. I didn't have to try to change to fit into anybody else. So I guess my masculine would have come in that sense of almost like a protector, just like making sure that I'm okay and that like making sure that I'm staying soft. Yeah. Like, I work in retail, so there could be a tendency to like get worked up by everything. So I guess it would be my masculine that would be there just like checking in, going like, hey, just stay where you are. Like, are we all okay here? Is everyone comfortable? Are we warm enough? You know, have we had enough water? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, like real basic needs being met.
Yeah. Beautiful. I got a little distracted towards the end there because I read Melissa's comment and I got excited. I love it. She said she's pretty obsessed with the moon more than ever. Thanks, lovely women. And then she said, I'm having the best sex of my life. This is the juicy crone piece. Yes. This is what I
Oh.
hear from like a lot of the women that I know, like in their 50s and their 60s, are like saying that they're having the best sex of their life, and actually that they're the juiciest that they've ever been. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. Totally.
Yeah.
Where did we even get that dried up crone? Like, I'm just seeing
Oh,
that as, see this like witchy, dried, wrinkly, like angry, like fuck that.
uh-huh.
Sorry, like
Hmm.
fuck that.
Yeah. Yeah,
True.
totally. Well, it's been I feel like a societal conditioning thing, is like make us think that we get to a certain age and that then we get this dried up old woman, no longer good for anything thing, and it's actually been a way to squash the energy of the crone coming in, because that's when we're actually at our most powerful, our juiciest, and it's like, well, we need to do something to stop these women from really being
Oh.
in that power, because that's like, if you think back to like tribal times, that's when everyone would go to the crone, everyone would go to the elder, to the women who had been through it, who now had this power to be able to intuit more, to be able to bring her gifts into the community. So it's like, well, that's quite scary when they're trying to control different aspects of who we are or what we do. So yeah, to me, it's like that's where that archetype started to come from, when in reality it's a load of bullshit.
Mm.
So I'm all for more people speaking up like that, and yeah, speaking about the great sex they're having and how amazing life is and all of that.
Mhm.
um, Zoe said, oh, Arcadia, your reflections on your dad are melting me. Oh, for what a man. So much love, babes.
Oh,
Same.
I have to go give
um,
him.
and she's sharing about her experience of the masculine as well. So she says, during bleed, my masculine is definitely there to bring me into quiet and stillness, and wants to contain me so I don't go out and get yang, very yin, which is masculine. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome, Zoe. Thank you. I actually really appreciate you sharing on that as well, because Zoe's another one that I really know is so tapped into her masculine and her feminine, and her body, and really understanding these aspects that we're speaking about as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Zoe, for sharing your piece on that. Um, oh, and Zoe's masculine and my masculine have the same name, Zach. And so, and actually my birth name, which not a lot of people know, is Zoe. So
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
yeah. So both of our names are exactly the same,
Oh.
which is hilarious.
And you're both about to bleed, you guys are proper.
I know. We're amazing.
They say
Yeah.
we're unpredictable, huh?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly right. And like, yeah, there's totally something in that. So yeah. And there's now a million little love hearts coming across. I love it. Um, oh, now I'm feeling as we've gone through all that, there was like another question that I wanted to ask you as well. Ooh. Can you share for me again, like the name of the cycles again? So it was like creative is right before you bleed. Is that right? Like that period coming into your bleed. And what do we go into when we bleed again?
Reflective.
Reflective. Okay. So that's definitely the more in, more quiet. That kind of makes sense to me.
And dynamic.
Dynamic. That's right. So that's the one that's really interesting. So it's really that after we've gone for that in quiet time, where it is really our like, whoa, we're out. Hello world. I've just popped out of the woman cave kind of thing.
Mm. Mm.
That to me is fascinating, 'cause it almost doesn't feel like the natural thing, but now that you've spoken of it, I'm like, I think that's what happens for me.
Yeah. So I'll speak about the phases a bit more. So
Mm.
the reflective phase it's funny, I never know where to start.
Mm.
We're a cycle. So the reflective phase is a time to really like reflect on things. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just take the time to kind of feel into like what's happened over the last month and just rest. And then it's like so resting. Yeah. Like the more we rest, the more energy we have again for the next phase, the dynamic phase, the more we can like reflect on stuff. And sometimes I feel like I need to go backwards. So the creative phase before the reflective phase, that's it's the autumn, the season of autumn, which is like when the leaves fall from the trees. So it's like we are choosing what we're letting go of energetically. And this is the time when a lot of like we can make really bold decisions during the creative phase, because we've got a lot of energy, like that kind of energy that builds up. And we can be quite ruthless sometimes. So a lot of people break up with their partners because like all of a sudden they get all this, and then they're just like, no, get out, and or they quit their job or something like that. So I mean, if you need to do that, then that's fine. But a better way could be that you just pay attention to what's happening in the creative phase and try to use your energy, your creative energy, like doing creative things at the beginning, especially like a lot of exercise, like get your body moving. And so then when you come into the reflective phase, you can then kind of sit back with a different perspective and have a look at the things that you're wanting to get rid of or wanting to change, and why you're having those thoughts. Like a big thing, and we talked about this a bit with the boyfriend thing or the partner thing, is that if something wants to change in your life, it's not necessarily them, it's something within yourself that you need to see. So in the creative phase, we connected to our subconscious and we see ourselves. And sometimes we see parts of ourselves that we don't like, but it's just seeing that part of ourselves and just accepting it. Like, and if we want to get rid of something, then yeah, okay, we'll get rid of it. But then just moving into the reflective phase, you can really sit on it and see it in a different way. And then in the dynamic phase, that's a really good time to make decisions. That's when we're feeling really like logical and like intellectual. So yeah, the more you rest in the reflective phase and the more you surrender into that, the more energy you'll have when you move into the dynamic phase, and you'll have more of an ability to like decide on things that you've kind of that have happened over the month before. So it just, yeah, it keeps working in this cycle. Then you make decisions based on the last month. In the dynamic phase, you make decisions for the next month, what you want to be doing, what your goals are, whether you really want to break up with your boyfriend, whether you really want to quit your job, whether you really want to bloody move to America or whatever it is, you know, that you want to do to like escape the stuff that's coming up for you. And then moving into the expressive phase, that's the ovulation and much more feminine again, and like wanting to connect and feel love and working with the phases. The expressive phase, you can look again at any goals that you've made from the dynamic phase and reassess them from a different point of view. And you can see like, okay, how is this in the dynamic phase? It's very self-centered. It's like, I want this for myself. In the expressive phase, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean to my world around me, to the people around me? How do I feel about those things? Like dynamic, very heady, expressive, much more. So like, do I really feel good about all of those things that I said I wanted to do in the dynamic phase? And then creative phase, again, it's like you get a bit more ruthless again. So you're like, okay, I might have thought it was a good idea, I might have felt good about it, but do I have the energy to do it now? Like, is this something that really is going to serve me? And you can like either go, yes, it is, and feel that, or actually, no, it's not, and kind of cut that out, let it go. Moving back into the reflective phase where you just kind of recalibrate everything from the last month, just rest, let your body process, let your mind process. Do some meditating, because you're like already basically meditating from all of the chemicals in your head. You're like, your brain waves are going into the most meditative, like it's like a natural meditation for us in those few days leading up to and when we bleed. So really tapping into the intuition in that time.
That piece that you're sharing there, I find that really interesting about like the natural meditation phase. So can you share more into that? Like that's like what's actually going on for us? That is that because we're coming more inner and we're becoming more intuitive or more like able to tap into our intuition that brings us into that, or like what's your take on that? Like, I know for me it's definitely when I bleed I'm my most intuitive, but it feels like there might be another link to that you have.
So in the creative, so like the end of the creative phase and coming into the reflective phase, our brain waves actually change. I think it's that we go into more alpha brain waves.
Wow.
Which is like slower. Like you can feel in your body that you're going slower, yeah, and that's essentially like your whole body is going slower. So your brain waves slow down, and when you're meditating, like generally it's to slow down, yeah, like slow your heart rate, slow your body functions, things like that. So I mean, for me, I relate to it in this way. Sometimes I feel like I'm just like walking around in a daze. It's like my brain's totally checked out and my body is just kind of swimming around almost. So there are studies that show that the brain waves of women are really slowing down before bleeding, and it's a more you're accessing more of your subconscious mind. You're not so in your head, you're more in your like feelings in your body and your intuition in that sense. So yeah, that's the way that it's like a kind of walking meditation, like really that's a superpower. Yeah, like men train for hours and hours to meditate. We're just like, yeah, well, give me a few weeks, and as long as I'm in the right stage of my month, then I can just like naturally meditate. So tapping into the intuition is a really powerful piece there. Like in that creative phase when we're deciding what to let go of, it's like it can be challenging because a lot of stuff can come up because we're so tapped in. And a really interesting point that I learned is that positive affirmations, not so good in the creative phase, really good in the dynamic phase because we have a lot of energy and we're feeling really positive about ourselves. And so if we do a positive affirmation, we really believe it, we feel really confident. In the creative, connected to all of our deep, darker subconscious stuff, that if we try and do a positive affirmation, our minds will start telling us, oh, but what about all of those times when that didn't work and that wasn't true? And it just like an explosion of that subconscious, our darkness, I guess, in a way. And so if we can kind of get a good relationship with that and use it, yeah, it's like a way of seeing your shadow every month and your intuition every month.
Awesome. I had absolutely no idea even that our brainwaves shifted, or like I can definitely relate to what you're speaking of with the fact that I'm just due to bleed. It's like I definitely have noticed today this, like, even I was speaking to someone, I was like, to go into my mind is kind of too much right now and really just in my body. And it's exactly this piece that you're sharing. So yeah, that's really cool. We've got one last question before we wrap up, and it's from Zoe again. So she said, any reflections on a longer bleed versus a shorter bleed? Is there anything you know of energetically that is going on with this, i.e. why some women have long bleeds and some have short?
So my mind automatically goes to Chinese medicine, because that's where I'm trained as well. And there's like a bajillion different reasons for different bleed cycles, on a physical kind of energetic level. But what I've noticed on a more like practical level, I used to have longer bleeds, and more I have worked with, like, the more I cycle, the more regular my bleeds become. And it goes back to that piece of like surrendering into each stage, each phase, and going fully into that and really allowing it rather than fighting it. The more I go into it, the easier I go through it. So I'll go into the dynamic phase, I'll be right in there, and then all right, now that's done. Now I'm in the expressive phase. I'll really go into that, and okay, now that's done. The creative phase, I'll really go into the creative phase, and that's done now. Like, now I can bleed. And talking about planning, like for me, planning my reflective phase starts a few days before I bleed. So if I actually start kind of tapping out of life, like close off my calendar and don't make plans to do anything, and know that I'm just going to be resting on those last few days before I bleed, then my period's got space to come. So yeah, talking from the phases perspective, I would say the more you can find your own phase and go into it, the more smoothly your cycle will go. And like knowing when you're ovulating is an important part of that, because that's like the two easy ends. There's menstruation and ovulation, and then you've just kind of got to go in the middle of both of those to see what else there is. Because if your period if it's a longer cycle, you might still be ovulating after 12 days, and then you're getting, like, this was my experience when my cycles went for a long time. It was like I had 2 weeks of premenstrual. And so for me, like, really going into the premenstrual and going into that energy allowed my cycle to kind of catch up with myself, or me to catch up with my cycle, I guess. Yeah. Or it might just be cycle is longer, and then you get like longer phases, or for you with your shorter cycle, your phases will be a bit more shorter. So that feels really efficient to me. Yeah, like you're like, okay, I do this for a couple of days and now I'm done. Awesome, on to the next one. And
yeah, it's fascinating how much we all vary on that. Like, my cycle is very quick and my bleed is very short and very light. Like, I bleed 2 days, that's it, and it's extremely light. Yet other women that I know will bleed for like 5 days and it's really heavy, and it's like, it's just, my understanding on it is, it's just so dependent on the woman and our own body, and just being with that. Like, unless there's actually the feeling that something is wrong, then it's like you say, it's like relaxing into, cool, this is how my body works and this is what my own cycle is, and learning to live within that, and knowing that it's going to be different to somebody else's, and that's just the beauty and the joy of the womb. Like, she's different in all of us, and she brings different magic in all of us, and to me that's just the beauty of it and part of it. So
and just in terms of the cycles, like, everyone will enjoy different phases more than others. Like, everyone will have a phase that they feel more like it's their true self in. So there's always just appreciating that, like appreciating, like, wow, I feel really good in this phase, and then I don't feel so good in that phase, but acknowledging that you do feel good as well, and then also how you can kind of work it out so that you feel better in the next phases. And just from a Chinese medicine perspective, Chinese herbs has been something that's been so incredible for me with my own cycle, and helping to ease like the physical and emotional and to ease the symptoms. It's more of a long-term thing. Like, you need to take them for quite a few months to like clear yourself out. But really recommend finding a good Chinese medicine herbalist.
Awesome. Cool. So let's kind of start wrapping that up. I'm wrapped with this conversation. I knew that we would have like an awesome time with this and have plenty to talk about. And like, I think you and I could just sit here and talk for hours about this topic. So I really feel like, any other questions that you've got, ladies and women who watch the replay, please make sure that you put your questions, and, tag Arcadia as well, just to grab her attention, and I'm sure she'll jump on and check this and answer any bits that you've got as well, and as well, I check it as well. And I really believe that Arcadia is like just a wealth of knowledge in this, and from being like a fellow spiral practitioner, I kind of have a little bit of an insight on some of the other stuff that she's doing. So if this is an area that interests you, I would totally say, like, private message her or add her as a friend or whatever, and really get to know the work that she's doing, because it's very much focused in this area. And I'm really excited by it. Like, I feel like this is a really powerful space to be doing work in, and I really feel you in it as well. So I'm so excited that you've been on and had this chat with me. Thank you so much. Awesome woman.
My absolute pleasure. It's such an honor, Zapheria. Thank you.
Yay, pleasure.
Finding this space, it's so important to have our little circle online.
Yeah, I love it. Like I'm so loving this space of women and us being able to really just share our gifts with each other, and all of these conversations coming in. So it's potent and powerful stuff. These ladies saying thank you and all that. So I'm going to end the live part now. So thank you, ladies. Thank you for joining us for our awesome Mystery Monday, and we'll see you again next Monday. Now that I've figured out the Wi-Fi situation again, I can keep on going with these each week. So yeah, so thank you, ladies, and good night. The end of that. Oh, yay. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. It was really nice. It's I can just press done so that goes up and goes live, so they can watch the replay, and I can stop recording.